Hello, hello. Here's hoping that everything is working today. Let's see. Here we are. Okie doke. Hi, Dominic. How's it going? Hey, David. By the way, is the audio and video, everything working okay? Sound looks fine. Thanks, HRM. Okay, good. I yesterday when I just kept screwing up one after another. Hey, Brian. Oh, anyhow, today I have been always find a new kind of busy. Today's Saturday, isn't it? Which means I've got one more thing to do before tonight. I just realized that. Okay, let me start off with sort of the what do you mean with the Stepford wives? That's what I'm going to just. You anticipated me, HRM. The Stepford Wives was may have been a book and a movie, and it was about these guys who were sort of complaining about their wives. Oh, they worked really hard and they did this and they did that, and they came home and their wife was not happy for one reason or another. They weren't they either weren't pretty enough, they couldn't cook, they couldn't do this, they couldn't do that. Never mind that they were pretty busy themselves with real work that they had to do, and so they made these. I think they were like robots, but they were cyberbots or whatever they are, androids, I guess. They made these androids that were the perfect wives. And I think they lived in a subdivision or an area called Stepford. And so they called them the Stepford wives. And so when these guys when they married off to these Stepford wives, the wives were perfect. They were everything that they had wanted, and never complained, never, were took them to a rocket to the moon every time they were in bed, and did everything that sort of with these dream wives. And I think at some point I mean, the movie is an old movie. I haven't seen it in years. But the point is that I think eventually they got sort of like really tired of that. Everything was the same all the time. All of the go visit guys and their wives, and they were the same. And there was a sort of this sameness to them, this perfection. There was a sameness, perfection. And I'm thinking, there was something about certain brands that I didn't care for, not because I didn't like them, but they were just like the Stepford wives. They were sort of boring in their sameness, in their perfection. I know that sounds, it's sort of, what? Anti or counterintuitive. But that was, so there's certain brands that I just will yawn every time I see them. And I thought, well, I'll pass this on to you guys. And I know that not everybody's, and don't ask me where you can get a Stepford wife. They're all gone. Hey, Rancher. Haven't we all been drinking the Kool-Aid at least a little bit? Oh, yeah. Gallons of it. It's called advertising. Seiko Spring Drive kind of gives me that feeling. Yeah, that would be, you know, again, yeah, 1975, was that when it was? I saw it again. It was on on TV, and I don't think I watched the whole thing because that was that was it was a really very interesting concept. And one of the things that sort of reminded me of it was a movie that came out this summer called Barbie. And the Barbie dolls are all the same. And I saw these Barbie dolls in their pink outfits and the sameness that they had to them. And so I thought, okay. So this might be an analogy that we could kick around in Watch Outside Tops. Hey Dom, how you doing? Don, I mean, yeah, we have a Dom and Don. David, I love the Grand Seiko dials, but I feel like that's all they have to offer. The rest is technically outstanding. But Blant, this is exactly the same kind of thing I get. Here you have that they worked on the technology. I remember, it wasn't that many years ago. Forgot how many, but there was this brand new assembly line that Tag Heuer had, and they were very proud of their assembly line. And it was all done with nanotechnology, and it showed this thing. It just looked like everything turned out perfectly, and all of the models and so forth. Now, one could argue that, well, they had different models. Well, they had different models of Barbie dolls. They had the stewardess, the dog, all of these different ones. And I just said something a little rougher than that, I guess. So anyway, so what do you guys have? Cookie cutter. That's another way of putting it too. Yeah. They're too busy making babies then. Mm. Okay. I tried to build my first NH35 watch yesterday and could not get the second hand on for the life of me. Any temps landed. The second hand wouldn't go on. Okay, this is one thing that Landon, I would check if I were you. Is that underneath the dial? Did you put the hour, the hour gearing for it? That's the only thing on that. Sort of a little off topic, but check that. Hi, Orange Han. Would a super clone fake be the equivalent of a Stepford wife? I think that's it. Could be, I suppose. I mean, the super clones is sort of an interesting idea. If you take a factory built Rolex, let's say you take a couple of day dates. All right, you have one, and then you have another one. There are no differences, right? They're supposed to be clones. And if they're not, I guess somebody's checking them, say, "Oh, something's wrong with this," and back to the bin or whatever they do with ones that have an imperfection. That's, there was another sort of the Nazis were that way. They wanted to have everybody the same and everybody perfect. Okay, Grand Seiko did patterns. Dial patterns are the same as well. Machine stamped off a plate. Looks wise to me, Junhans. A lot of them. I mean, is that there are a lot of watches that you could pick up, and I think if you picked up a couple different Larique, you could find quirks in each one of them that are a little different than the other ones. I love the offset Geneva wave quirks. Anyway, yeah, those are the kind of things. They're either they're done so well. Now, it's an irony because a lot of people say, well, they like brand X because they're so uniform and this and that and so forth. They keep perfect time and everything else, and that's good. And to me, this silicone hairspring adds to this Stepford wife sameness because you're not going to have any magnetic problems. Zunk, zunk, zunk. Me with this guy, he likes to get magnetized. I hope he didn't anymore though. So that's another point. Hey, Quarters High Junior, how are you? Okay, yeah, Landon, that's about the only thing I could think of. Hey, Lee, happy Super Bowl. Super Bowl's tomorrow, right? Oh, today's Saturday. Great, I got an extra day. Just realized that. Hey, Dominic. Then again, some things we like or demand constancies, like Coke or the soft drink. That's interesting. Yeah, I don't think I like if I went and got a Coke and it tasted like a root beer, I wouldn't like it. Or if it was off one way or the other. Yeah, that's a good point, Dominic. There's some things we do. I like the air the same. You know, they somebody was commenting on living in Los Angeles with all the smog, and they said Angelinos don't like any air you can't see. So that was funny. Hey Arnie, how you doing? Your Super Bowl pick. My Super Bowl pick has everything to do with the 1980s. It's got nothing to do with today. All right. And it's not so much who I'm for, it's who I'm against. During the 1980s, my team at the time, and still is, I imprinted on it and can't get it off my back. Are the Chargers, the San Diego Chargers, now the Los Angeles Chargers. Well, what happened was that the Chargers used to get beat up by Joe Montana and that group all the time. So I wasn't too happy. Yeah, I'm the same way about the Raiders. So anyway, it's not so much that I'm for Kansas City, so much as I am. But I'll tell you though, I saw the way San Francisco played. They really played beautifully. So I think this is the best kind of Super Bowl for me. I've got no dogs in this fight, really. No matter which team wins, I'll be happy. As long as they're not Dallas, which would upset my wife if they lost, or if it's not the Chargers, which getting upset with the Chargers, is sort of now that I can also too with the New England. New England wasn't my real team, but it was for about 20 years when Brady was winning all the Super Bowls. But yeah, no, I don't have a dog in the fight, Artie. How about you? Hi, Eduardus. Tudor Black Bay. Oh, that's a great example, Eduardus. Hey, Lee. Hope the SB commercials are more interesting than the tag watch. Yeah. Yeah, the Super Bowl commercials are always a lot of fun. I'll tell you, I had mentioned this morning, but I think it true also. After watching that kickoff that H. Moser had with Alpine Motors, I thought, my God, here H. Moser had the most fun, the most interesting, the craziest advertising and commercials that they had. And then they have the one they did with Alpine has got to be the biggest bore almost imaginable. I mean, how can you take a watch like H. Moser and a race car and make it boring? They figured out how to do it. I don't think Malin had had anything into that. Hey, Orange Hand, vintage reissues are kind of like Stepford Wives. Yeah, that's an interesting point. The homage got all the looks but no soul. That's a good point. That's a very good point. Artie, Don Coryell Chargers. Yeah, Air Coryell. Dominic, some people feel the personalization is the nicks and scratches or what. Yeah, I agree. I agree with that. Um, yeah, you get a watch you wear, what happens is that wearing a watch, especially one with nicks and stuff, because every nick and scratch on one of your favorite watches is a personal story. I mean, if something happened to you. Oh, that was when my wife threw the frying pan at me and I ducked, things like that. So all of those things personalize it. I agree. Anyone want to buy a Moser Henry double hairspring in white gold? Everybody should like that one. Love it. Hey, how you doing there? Mark J, the FP Zorn man. Hey, Artie, let's see. Jim Harbaugh will turn your charges around. I've heard that before. Artie, I'm sorry. I'm a Chiefs fan, Bill, so very biased. Okay, well, that's cool. Like I said, I got no dog in this fight. I really don't. And what I'm looking forward to tomorrow is my favorite kind of football game. Two really outstanding teams. I mean, both of them are just great. And watching that, I realize every 11-year-old girl in the country is going to be watching for Taylor Swift, but I don't know. We don't have any around the house right now, and our granddaughters are safely on the West Coast. Hey, Steve, how you doing? How you spell your last name? Steve, it's just like the Colonel Sanders franchise. Same thing. Just like a fried chicken franchise. Sanders. Swifties versus MAGA. Well, there's that. That's a whole different team. But San Francisco, of all of the cities, I think, in the world, that's probably the least MAGA one around. Hey, Orange and quartz than Apple watches, Stepford watch. That's interesting about let me say this about the Apple watches. I don't have one. My wife has one, and she wears it all the time. And she got the version. Hermes has a version, believe it or not, and it comes in an Hermes strap. But what's on it is there's a picture of a Hermes horsey that she has there. She's wearing around, then something happens, and it changes this and it changes to that. So I think you're right on the one hand that there's a lot of cloniness to Apple watches, but my wife's watch seems to have its own little personality echoing my wife's. Oh, what are some other good Stepford wives? Um, this is what I think the whole Swatch is trying to turn them all into Stepford wives. We want perfect watches. We don't want those ones that you have to regulate the balance spring, or we don't want those that might get magnetized. And I know it's just like if you have a watch with nothing to worry about, what fun is that? Something it's going to be really interesting. I think that um, watch collectors probably are very much of a minority, but they're more than I realize. There are a lot of watch collectors, and unfortunately, if you took the majority of watch collectors, and I say unfortunately in the sense that these more unique watches sort of get tossed by the wayside. I, to some extent, and I mean this to some extent, the Grand Prix d'Horologie de Genève really helps to energize creativity. I really think they do, because someone will say, "Oh man, let's do this, and maybe we'll win a grand prize award or something." So, I think that's one of our hopes, and of course the AHCI, the Independent Watchmakers Association, they do too. But I mean, that's the only thing that'll keep us from Barbie dolls and. Oh, hey Forbin, how you doing? The Crown is the lemmings brand. All fear of being left out buys. That's an interesting way of putting it, Forbin. Are there any pet X in the current catalog that you're fond of? There are a lot of them that were made before 2009, Marty. Um, the thing of it is that if I look at Patek Philippe or I look at some other brands that are big brands a lot, it was so easy to be distracted by new stuff that's coming out of. That's why I like H. Moser so much, is that they keep coming out with all this new stuff. Forget the bad kickoff that they had for Alpine. The other things they have are interesting watches. What are some other? I think Parmigiani. So Parmigiani did a turnaround. Now there's a waiting list for their watches and everything like that. But I hope the turnaround doesn't turn into sort of this smoothing out too much of the Parmigiani character, which I do like. Swatch and Blanc Pond. Now, Blanc Pond was supposed to get Frederic Piguet movements. I think it was either Blanc Pond. Yeah, I think it's Blanc Pond. Was supposed to. They and Frederic Piguet used to be sort of a watch company. One owned the other, and then Swatch bought them, and all of them. The Frederic Piguet was sort of subsumed by Blanc Pond. But as a Swatch thing, they've been putting in these silicon hairsprings, which give them the sameness and the perfection without a soul kind of watches. There'll be a new quartz crisis. For some brands, that wouldn't be a bad thing in this respect. That with the quartz crisis, the Swiss, I don't think, had the same access to quartz movements. Maybe I'm wrong about this. And the quartz crisis, according to at least some I've been reading lately, said, well, wasn't quite the way you thought it was. Companies like Patek Philippe will, I don't know for how long, but they will continue to dominate sort of the really upper crust of the imagery of upper crust. But that's starting to loosen. There was this one program I saw. I was watching TV one day, and some guy had he was getting all dressed up to go out to put on the dog. And it was like, you're not wearing that, are you? Aren't you, getting something that is nicer or something that will put you somewhere else? And then there was some kind of interaction with a billionaire, and this one PR person was snorting at him. Oh, I see you have a FP Journe. Now that comments like that, would shake up Patek Philippe, I think. Patek Philippe, though, they make beautiful watches, and so I don't think they have anything to worry about. As a collector, though, I have no interest in anything before 2009 that they make. A museum has a collection. I just own some things. Oh, poor, but how sweet. You're just a sweet little collector. Okay, pre-2009 equal pre-silicon. That's right. Philippe for the show. Okay, so yeah, I wonder if how do you start a watch company that put on I look like I have a UPS shirt on. Yeah. I go out and I feel like delivering a package. Um, what can we do about that? I mean, if a collector, there's some people though, I think, who are very, very happy with having ones that have that kind of sameness. They'll say something like this: "Well, if you get Acme watches, you know what you're getting. They're accurate. You don't have to worry about them. They need fixing. There's always a place to get them fixed." Whereas some brands, which I won't mention, they people sort of worry a little. Oh, gee whiz, what's going to happen when the thing breaks and we need some kind of service? We better figure that one out. We're working on it. And I don't know. There's something about if you have a watch that you can worry about, then you got something. It's like, oh, I got to keep it away from magnets, and I have to do this to it, and I've got to wind, like the hand wound, you're supposed to wind up at least once a week. Those kinds of things are, they give you. I mean, they're an activity with your watch. Uh, you can put the same thing like with a quartz watch. You put a quartz watch on every day until the battery runs out, and everything is fine. You don't have to think about it. And I don't know how long the batteries are running these days. Maybe a year or so. So some every once a year you have to go and put a new battery in, back to perfect time again. Dominic, if silicon is the start part by part replacement for maintenance free, then we lose maintenance watchmakers. Hence a new quartz crisis. Yeah, I see what you mean. That's a good point. In other words, if with all of these quartz silicon watches, with these silicon hairspring watches, they don't need service. And if they don't need service, they don't need watchmakers. And if they don't need watchmakers, what are we going to do? I think Rolex needs them. A lot of brands need them. I just think I was talking to Michael Cobb, and he has a chronograph Daniel Roth that wasn't working right. He bought it for me. That's why it's not working right. And he sent it into LVMH for service, and it's taking quite a long time. When I sent in my Chanel, they said 6 months. I got it back in about 2.5, but still, they got somebody somewhere. They sent it to Switzerland to take care of those things. No. Yeah, Artie, another thing, let me tell you else is good for before they gave up on the Geneva seal. They were about 99% of all Geneva seals seem to go to Patek Philippe. But now you see them, I think, in 3 watches. One is a Vacheron Constantin. Some of them had it before then, Vacheron Constantin. You see it in Roger Dubois watches, which is sort of weird because I don't know what started it, but from the very beginning, when Roger Dubois, sorry about the pronunciation, had his own brand, uh, they had Geneva seals, and they still do. That's one thing I like about it. Another thing, and I think Chopard is really funny. It's the only brand I know that had a QF as well as a Geneva seal, not at the same time, but sort of those kinds of marks. I think Patek Philippe would be a lot better off if they didn't give themselves that stupid quality, that QQ or PP thing that they have. They're well known enough to they could simply say, we didn't want it anymore. We don't want your stinking budge. Hey, Velvia, man, my Seiko chronograph alarm has not had a battery change in 10 years. It runs minus 19 seconds per year. Wow. Yeah, that's really good. Yeah, you got a good quartz. They're great. Dominic, I mean, they start replacing other parts in the watch for maintenance free with similar silicon and non-metals. Yeah, Dominic, that's exactly what they do. You know, replacing a hairspring and balance wheel is not easy. I had two of them. I was working with Dominic, whose son was making these brass plates that I was using to set up a resonance. I was making my own resonance movement with two 6498 clones. And so in order to do the scaling down, I had to remove. I didn't have to. I did. Somebody suggested I remove the balance wheel and the hairspring, so I did. And then I got them back, and they were all ready to try it out to put them into a resonance. And so I put one back, and I couldn't get the other one back. So I got another one and sent it back, and I said, "Hey, could you cut this one down? Be careful though, because the balance wheel is still in it." I got it back, and I've got those things working in resonance. So it's like, that's sort of weird, but it was a lot of fun to do it. Yeah, 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 Artie. They're new ones I just do not care for, but they're older ones. I've got one on my list that I'm gonna get. Not thinking about get. I'm gonna get it. Current Roger Dubuis. Yeah, they're really excellent movements. What they did though, this is weird. They changed the names of the movements created by Roger Dubuis. So you have like an RD14. It's just a sweet, just really a sweet automatic movement of his. And I had one on my Sympathy, and that thing, and on also I had it on the Easy Diver. Both of them kept excellent time, just really just solid, really solid movements. Now they've got everything they have is this just sort of this really messy open face, just looks like a mess on the insides, skeletonized everything is. I don't know why they did that, because there are a lot of other dials that are one easier to read and more attractive, I think. I wish they would. I wish they would do one of the, like there's some of the older Sympathy or the what are they called? The Homage Observatory. Some of those neat ones that they had. Yeah, I'd like to see that. What's your favorite years for Roger Dubuis? Probably early 2000s. I can't give you a specific date, Forbin. I think it's bad for the industry. We'll see what happens. You could be right. Likely early 2000s while the Dubuis still alive. Yeah. He was a great friend of the Vita Rex. He and Jean-Marc Vitarek used to work together for Harry Winston. And so, yeah, they really like him a lot. I mean, it's unfortunate, that he sort of seemed to die pretty early. Same thing happened with Pratt. Derek Pratt from Urban Jurgensen, and some of these other guys who are really just great watchmakers. Richemont have really bastardized Roger Dubuis, not to mention what they've done with Longa, Artie. 1999, 2004 was a glory years for Roger Dubuis. Yeah, I just anything from early 2000s I like, or the sort of the aughts, as they say. How we doing on time? And where's my timekeeper? My timekeeper left. He usually hollers at his frying pan time. Anyway, guys, it's just sort of an unusual topic, maybe, but I thought it'd be fun to kick around, see what some other ideas you had. And anyway, have a great rest of your weekend. Enjoy, for those of you who enjoy American football. Tomorrow is going to be a fun day, I think. Especially like if you're like me, you know, doesn't matter who wins. Take care.